Hi, my name is Keith Cooper from Northlight Images, and in this video I'm going to address a subject I was asked about recently: workflows for photography. Now I'll cover what I mean by that, different options, various other things, but what got me thinking about this? Well, first of all, I'm in the midst of a big tidy up in my office, or more to the point, a big sort out and filling of bin bags of stuff that is just collected on tables for no good reason other than it was there. But somebody asked me, and I do welcome these questions, they said they had been looking, and I'd asked lots of people about this and hadn't got a good answer about what was the correct, and I emphasize the correct, photography workflow. Now, my first answer to that is there's no such thing. Photography workflow, which in essence means the whole process from, I would say, from picking a camera up and deciding to use it through to whatever your end product is or whatever you want to get out of it, that step of sequence that you follow through it, that's what I'm referring to as a workflow. Is there a workflow? Well, no, I'm not surprised they didn't get a satisfactory answer. Now, they went on to give me a list of all the equipment that they're using, and the list went almost down to serial number level in its level of completeness, which instantly tells me something about the style that that particular person was probably looking for. Now, what do you mean by workflow? It means something subtly different to everyone else. My feeling is that this particular person wanted a recipe style workflow, i.e. you do this, you do that, you do the next, and well, they were always going to be out of luck with any of my stuff because they pointed out that, you know, I'd got some interesting snippets but not a full workflow. Well, I don't have a full workflow. I have a series of different workflows that suit different things I'm doing photographically. Now, I'm hoping some of this will be relevant to people and people go, oh yes, I hadn't thought of that, or yes, I do that, oh that's good, or whatever. This is not in any way intended to be an answer to that question, because I just don't believe there is such a thing. It's like asking me, what's the best printer? And the answer to that is always, it depends. It disappoints some people, and I'm pleased to disappoint them because they're asking the wrong question for me to answer. Maybe the right question for them. But anyway, all of the different workflows, it's a personal choice amongst things. Now, I mentioned that different people will have a different approach to these things. And this is why one size doesn't suit all. I learned years ago, about 20 years ago, I did a few terms of evening classes where I taught intermediate level sort of Photoshop, picture editing. And basically it would be setting different challenges. How would you correct an image like this? How would you process an image? To give an idea that it's an actual series of decisions that you make on your way from what you start with to get to where you want it. And the whole idea of it was that you have to think about it, and no one size suits all. Now, I had one person on this course who got very annoyed with it and actually made a complaint to the course, people who managed the courses, that I wasn't providing enough concrete examples and wasn't giving them sequences of steps to fix images. Fortunately, the person who ran these courses, these evening classes, had experience of dealing with this particular lady and suggested a course that she might be happier with, which was great. Solved the problem for both of us. Made me realise that just because I see a way of doing something, it won't necessarily work for you, for somebody else. It's something you have to get people to decide. The other thing is I really enjoy cooking. I would rate my cooking skills far better than my video making skills, but I follow recipes in baking because baking is much more of a science. But for most cooking, I use recipes for inspiration and no more than that. I may try something new following a recipe the first time, but you can guarantee that I won't a second time follow the same recipe. It's just how you deal with things, and it's accepting. Some people like recipes, some people like to just freestyle it. Now, different ways of how you approach it. To my mind, as long as the food's all right, I'm not going to complain. But anyway, workflows. I have, I think, probably 3. Now, I have lots more bits and bits because it's a mix and match process. I have a work one. Now, that is quite an easy one, really, because I'm usually given a brief to take some photos. I usually have some degree of interpretation as to what I do, but I know I've got to go and take some photos. I know from the type of photos what lenses I might need, what camera is probably best for it, all sorts of things like that, what kit I might need. I also know that those images, in almost all cases, are going to be in colour. Almost all cases, all I'm going to do is send the edited files, and not heavily edited files, just basic colour correction, geometry correction and whatever for architecture, industrial stuff. Those files will be sent off to a client who will then work with them and do whatever they want with them. Now, that's a really quite nice, easy workflow because I know what the objectives is, pictures the client is happy with. I know what the subject is. And it's a fairly simple process. I will shoot RAW files on cameras. The reason I shoot RAW files is because I give them more flexibility. There are workflows where JPEGs are perfectly fine and things. So, yeah, it's just not something I ever think about. All I normally would use would be the RAW files. So there we go. Nice, simple workflow. What do I do for that bit in the middle? Well, I process them probably with camera raw, maybe do a few tweaks and then export them. And that's really about it. I may apply a bit of sharpening. If I've had to do stuff at night and I've had to use a higher ISO, I may use more advanced noise reduction. I may use one of the DxO tools. I may use the DxO processing for that, for the raw files that converts them into DNGs. But those are mere technicalities. Those are just driven by the needs of the particular pictures I've taken. What about more personal pictures? What about prints? Here's a print. I've got a stack of these prints here. This is from testing the Canon Pro 1100, which I've paused briefly because there is a slight issue with the particular printer. It's an very early model printer I was sent, so I always expect occasional issues with it, and I'm waiting to hear some stuff back on Canon there. But makes great prints. Here we have a picture of Ely Cathedral, printed on a cotton rag art paper, several different papers here when I was looking at different paper styles. What went into something like this? Well, the first bit was I have a camera and lenses that I took with me at the time. This was a shift lens. I may take different lenses. This is probably quite close to my architectural work, except I rarely get asked for prints there. But colour for this was processed. I've used gigapixel AI to rescale it because this was an old picture taken on my Canon 1DS, so only 21 megapixels. So I've rescaled it and worked on that. I've gone through Photoshop, gone through various stages. I've got quite a few videos looking at different specific prints and the workflow I've gone through. So I'm not going to go through in the details there. If you want that, have a look at the videos index. I've got ones about the making of all sorts of different prints, and that covers that. But I'm more interested in this concept of, the proper workflow, and why, to me, it's just simply the wrong question. Now, when I have my print workflow, I know the end result. It's going to be a print. I may even have a good idea of what paper I'm going to print on. I will almost certainly know what printer I'm going to be printing on. Although, for the original taking of this, I had no idea because this was taken 13 years ago. So I had no idea what printers I might eventually print this on. So I always keep those raw files because you can go back to them and restart. I can't go and read, well, I could drive over to Ely and take another picture, but not much point just to reproduce the same thing. Ely Cathedral, by the way, if you ever get a chance, great place. And if you do visit, take the tour that goes right up on the roof and into the octagon. It is well worth it. It's fascinating to see what's underneath these old cathedrals, how they're constructed, how various bits of them are put together, and how they stay standing. Things like the octagon in Ely Cathedral. Well worth a look. But anyway, a diversion there. That's why I might go to take a picture. So that, in a way, is part of my workflow. It is because I've decided I'm going to visit one of the great cathedrals. I want some pictures. I want pictures just as, like anybody takes photos of a place. But I also want maybe a picture or two that I think will make a great looking print. I'm not looking commercially at these. I'm not looking to sell them or anything like that. But if they make a great print, then so much the better. And if you do want to sell, you do have to be a bit careful about licensing. Some cathedrals are much better, much friendlier towards photographers. The absolute worst one, and I've not been there for a few years, so they could have changed, was Durham Cathedral. They seem to have a deliberate anti-photographer policy, but well, whatever. Nice place. I'd take pictures on my phone if I really wanted to. Perhaps they don't even allow that. Who knows? But anyway. Workflows. Back to this one here. Yeah, it's fairly straightforward. There's sharpening in it. There's various bits and pieces. There is a natural divergence if I decide after I've taken a picture, and sometimes I may decide before that it's going to be black and white, sometimes after black and white. There's a natural divergence in workflows if I'm working in black and white or if I'm aiming for a colour print. There are slightly different processing ways. Certainly when it comes to the printing, I will look at different aspects of how to get a good black and white. But those are mere technicalities. These are all steps on the way. And it's how you put those together and decide what you want. Now, would I decide for something like this? Would I know when I'm taking the pictures if I'm thinking I'm going to make a print, I'm going to print them on art papers? It's likely, but would I think of that? No. I'm much more at this stage thinking, have I remembered to bring the right lenses with me? How do I get around the fact that a place has a no tripod policy? Well, that's just practice and getting used to using shift lenses handheld, which I have to do for work sometimes. So it's a useful skill. You do not need a tripod. Tripod helps for stuff like this, but you do not need a tripod for things like that. But then that's another choice that I've made in how I approach things. It does mean that certainly most seascapes and other things like that, you will never get that misty looking sea from long exposures from stuff I do. It falls into the category, oh, that's an interesting effect, next please. It doesn't appeal. But once again, if your workflows, if you like that style, if you like multi-exposure HDR pictures, if you like multi-exposure focus stacking, then your approach is going to be different. And there's your results, your files will need to be processed differently. That affects things. So that all makes a difference on it. Now, how detailed do you need to be in planning of this? I'd say not that much. Have an idea what you're doing. When you have a process that works, I'm going to say stick to it, but be prepared to change. Now, I'm lucky in that I get software to test and evaluate. That's one of the reasons I do it, in that it gives me an excuse to try different things that I wouldn't normally try. It means that as a commercial photographer, I can use new tools for processing images. I can do all sorts of stuff because I've got an excuse to do it. You might find, there are demo versions of things, but it's often difficult to decide whether you really like something just from a demo stuff. Be careful if people say, oh, this new plugin or this new way of processing files is the greatest thing ever. It might be the greatest thing ever for their particular approach, but it might not work for you. Be prepared to say, no, I personally don't like Lightroom. It doesn't fit in with my way of thinking about things, of doing things. I don't like the way it handles printing. You might, because it's actually designed to be a lot easier to do, so you don't have to think about stuff. Now, it may be that you like Lightroom for printing. If I was a wedding photographer, which I most absolutely am not, I might seriously think how completely change my workflow. And that's because the volume of prints that I'm looking at. If I'm processing on a typical architectural job, if I've got 50 photos, then that's a lot of photos I've taken. Very rarely on a job, even if I'm shooting over a whole day, will I get to 100 pictures. Now, I quite often take multiple pictures. So there's a culling process goes on early in that, because certainly with architectural vision, if I'm using very wide angle lenses, just a subtle movement of the camera by a foot or so can completely change the viewpoint, perspective, and how things look. So if you're not sure, I did a recent video looking at using a 9mm ultra wide lens, and that reminded me of just how little movement you need for the camera sometimes to change how a photo fits together from a compositional point of view. I might take shots of details and things like that. I might do all sorts of stuff, but in general, I don't do large volumes. If you do large, so if you're shooting sports, you need a completely different approach. Some sports may well be JPEGs, just the sheer volume is the easiest way of doing it. I have nothing against, shooting JPEGs in a camera. It's just for the sort of stuff I do, the raw files give me more flexibility to make different choices later on. Just what I do. So, let's say you don't need to be detailed. Mix and match is the key to it. In the same way, I have a vast great stack of lenses. I've been sorting out lenses as well. I found another drawer full of lenses. Incidentally, this entire drawer here, and it goes all the way back to the wall, is just full of camera stuff. I may do a video about what's in here one day. But yes, it goes back. The drawer underneath it is all electronics and electrical bits and pieces, disk drives and stuff, like all sorts of stuff. This house, we might be moving next year. It's going to be a chance for a voluntary and involuntary sort out of some of the junk that I've got. But anyway, if you're using whatever tool you choose to use, so if you like Lightroom, use it. And any of the other processes that are available. Beware of things like the Lightroom training industry that will insist on telling you that it is the best solution to everything, and if only you buy their plugins, their presets, their training courses, you too will take pictures like this. Take inspiration from other photographers, but I'm going to say take inspiration from the start and the end points of their workflow. So take inspiration from what they might have chosen to photograph, how they decided to photograph it. Take inspiration from the end results, the finished picture. Take the process they got there as no more than illustrative and something that may be of interest. Be inspired by the results, not the process. That's the key to it. I've looked at lots of photography books that I just collect from second-hand bookstores and things like that. I'm not interested in most of them what the photographer used to take the photos. I'm just looking at results. I'm just looking at pictures and thinking, I like that. I don't like that. Whatever. That's where the inspiration comes from me. But anyway, more than anything, think about workflow as something personal to you. Think about it. There's no wrong answers. There are no right answers. There are bad pictures. And the other thing, take more pictures. And remember that no matter how good your workflow, rubbish photo comes out at the end as a rubbish print or a rubbish image on screen. I hope that's of some interest, and I can get on with now with clearing more of this. Incidentally, this is my old MacBook Pro, with which it is upside down because I've taken the lid off because the battery nearly exploded. The other day, these are metal, this case was bent and the bottom was bulging out. I very carefully took the battery out of it before it caught fire and burnt the house down, which would have been not that welcome. But anyway, thanks for watching. If you've got questions, please do ask, because it's people's questions that set me off meandering on these things. And I hope that was of some interest. Thanks and bye.